I cannot be silent.
Back when Eisenhower was the president, golf courses is where most of his time was spent. So I never really listened to what the president said, because in general I believed that the general was politically dead. But he always seemed to know when the muscles were about to be flexed, because I remember him saying something, mumbling something about a military-industrial complex.
As I have walked among the desperate, rejected, and angry young men, I have told them that Molotov cocktails and rifles would not solve their problems. I have tried to offer them my deepest compassion while maintaining my conviction that social change comes most meaningfully through nonviolent action. But they ask, and rightly so, what about Vietnam? They ask if our home nation wasn't using massive doses of violence to solve its problem, to bring about the changes it wanted. Their questions hit home, and I knew that I could never again raise my voice against the violence of the oppressed in the ghettos without having first spoken clearly to the greatest purveyor of violence in the world today, my own government. For the sake of those boys, for the sake of this government, for the sake of the hundreds of thousands trembling under our violence, I cannot be silent.
Each one reach one, each one time.
I cannot be silent.
Nobody can do everything, but everybody can do something. Everyone must play a part. Everyone's got to go to work. Work for peace. Spirit say work.
I cannot be silent.
Empowering the body, mind, and spirit. This is We Cannot Be Silent with Phil Restino and Larry Pinkney.
January 20th, 2014 broadcast of We Cannot Be Silent with Phil Restino and Larry Pinkney. Once again, we're broadcasting on the Wolf Spirit Radio Network, and that can be found on the internet at wolfspiritradio.com. And its proprietor and producer of this show is Dave Corso. We want to once again thank Dave for bringing us into a new year, and actually bringing us into a new year for the show as well. Tonight marks the second anniversary of Larry Pinkney and I doing this show, We Cannot Be Silent. We have a full schedule of guests tonight, very, very special guests. Those of you who've got the email blast will know who we mean. And we will introduce them shortly. I would like to take a minute, though, and introduce, for those folks who are just turning into our program for the first time, a little background, short and succinct, as Larry suggests, on myself and Larry Pinkney and how we got the program started. I'm a chapter coordinator for the anti-war veterans organization, Veterans for Peace, and have been since 2005. And our Central Florida chapter had been leading the effort within Veterans for Peace to apply the same standard of a public call for impeachment to the Democrat President Barack Obama when basically just after a few days in office when he attacked the country of Pakistan. And we kept up that charge in 2009, 2010, and 2011. We were once again bringing the resolution to national for a national vote, and reached out to all the chapter coordinators, and one of them said, "Phil, you should check out this fellow Larry Pinkney." I said, "Who is Larry Pinkney?" Larry Pinkney is a veteran of the Black Panther Party, the original Black Panther Party, a political prisoner himself for 10 years, and has been a lifelong activist for peace and social justice, and a man who sticks to principle. And he alerted me to Larry's article in the Black Commentator in July of 2011 entitled, "Is it time to impeach Barack Obama?" And he flat out made the case for the very same reasons that we so strongly called for impeaching the Republican George Bush, the various war crimes. So that's how I sought Larry out and connected with him. Veterans for Peace did pass the resolution to apply the same standard to the Democrat Obama. And shortly thereafter, Larry, in November of 2011, we had October was the beginning of the nationwide Occupy movements, Occupy Wall Street, and the folks at UnitedWeStrike.com were doing their monthly radio marathon, and they called both Larry and myself on as guests on their program with Charles Irwin of AmericanFreedomBooks.com and Karen Tostado of UnitedWeStrike.com, and they wanted each of our perspective, my perspective as an anti-war activist, and Larry's perspective from the black community and progressive folks on this Occupy. And Larry and I hit it off during the show, and then January 2012, January 15th, Martin Luther King Jr.'s birthday, his actual birthday, we had our first show of We Could Not Be Silent with Phil Restino and Larry Pinkney. So that's as succinct as I can get it tonight, Larry. And so I did want to give the audience that background, and I'm proud of the work that you and I have been doing with the huge help from Dave Corso and Gary Hendershot and the others at UnitedWeStrike.com. So with that, I'd like to check in and make sure my partner in crime is with us. Larry, are you there?
Absolutely, I'm here, and I thank you for that wonderful, succinct introduction, Phil, and ready to rock and roll, ready to move on. We do have some wonderful guests this evening. I want to thank Dave Corso, Wolf Spirit Radio, and most importantly, I want to thank our audience. That's it for me for now.
Thank you, Larry. I think it's probably a good time now to introduce our guests, and I'm just thrilled that we have these folks on with us tonight. Our guest tonight will be the recently released political prisoner Lynne Stewart, known widely as the People's Lawyer, and her husband of many years, Ralph Poynter, who's a tireless leader of the Justice for Lynne Stewart campaign. And to learn more about that, please go to lynnestewart.org, and that's spelled LYNNESTEWART.org. And we also have joining us Reverend Edward Pinkney, a dynamite grassroots political organizer out of Benton Harbor, Michigan. And Reverend Pinkney is the founder of, I hope I pronounced this correctly, BANCO, or BANCO, which is the Black Autonomy Network Community Organization that works for economic and social justice in Benton Harbor, Michigan. And there's a website that y'all can click on to learn more about Reverend Pinkney and his work out there. And that website is bhbanco.org. And so I hope you all write that down and look into it. As far as Lynne Stewart spent some 30-plus years as the people's lawyer, defending the poor and others who without help would otherwise not get a fair defense. And Lynne was released recently on December 31st from prison on a compassionate release due to her medical condition with stage 4 cancer after having served 4 years of a 10-year sentence for, quote, aiding and abetting a terrorist organization. Lynne Stewart's sentencing and imprisonment were due to her prior legal defense of the fella named the Blind Sheik, Omar Abdel Rahman, a Muslim cleric convicted by the U.S. government of planning terror attacks, and the U.S. government's indictment of her later visits with the Sheik in prison in the so-called post-9/11 world as providing, quote, material support to terrorists. So that's the background I understand it as far as Lynne's case, and this is a good time to welcome Lynne and her husband Ralph. Lynne Stewart, Ralph Poynter, do we have you online?
Yes, we are online.
Indeed we are.
Oh, welcome so much, and Lynne, God bless you. We've been rooting for you for quite some time now, and Ralph, when I said tireless leader of the Justice for Lynne Stewart campaign, if you ever wanted to see a fella fight tooth and nail for his wife, boy, just look at Ralph Poynter. And we also have on the show Reverend Edward Pinkney, and we want to make sure the Reverend's on the line. Reverend Pinkney?
I'm here.
Oh, wonderful. Welcome to the show. And I think we got everybody tied in. I did want to start off with a couple basic questions for our guests. Some of us don't even know what a political prisoner is, you know, and some who do want to know a little more. So the three questions I wanted to pose, not only for myself but for the listening audience. Number one, what exactly is a political prisoner? Number two, aside from our guests tonight, Lynne Stewart, and our co-host Larry Pinkney, can you give our audience examples of other political prisoners in recent history and what was behind their imprisonment? And three, aside from our guests Lynne Stewart and our co-host Larry Pinkney, both political prisoners who fought for and won their releases from prison, can you give our audience examples of political prisoners who were eventually released and what led to their release? So I'll just throw that out there, and whoever would like to take that on, please jump in. And who is that?
Reverend Pinkney himself. See, I was also a political prisoner.
I'm sorry,
Right.
Reverend. I didn't mean to overlook that. Thank you.
That's okay. But I was also a political prisoner. Matter of fact, I was sent to prison for quoting Deuteronomy 28, starting with the 14th verse, and it actually it's the work you're doing, and within the community, fighting and standing up for the people. Anytime you stand up for the people, then you become a political prisoner, because that's very few people actually take a stand. And when you think about how important it is, especially in a city like Benton Harbor, Michigan, most people don't even know where Benton Harbor is. See, Benton Harbor is a small city with 10,000 people. It's about 75 miles from the city of Chicago. It's about 75 miles from Grand Rapids and 179 miles from Detroit. So what they do as a political prisoner, as I was also targeted by the government. They wanted to silence me, and I fought back. Matter of fact, with the help of Larry Pinkney and Ralph Poynter, they all was part of this, and they actually got in there and helped me to get out of prison. So it was a tremendous fight. Anytime you stand up for the people, they're coming after you, and you have to be prepared to deal with it. On that note, I'll turn it over to Ralph.
Thank you, Reverend.
What I wanted to say, and I'm sorry I interrupted, was the two gentlemen who have just introduced were very much a part of freeing Lynne Stewart. And now I'll turn it over to Lynn to talk about political prisoners.
Well,
Thank
you know,
you,
I always introduce that by saying there, by some definition, everyone in prison is there because of for political reasons. And when I say that, I mean the kid that doesn't get an education and ends up on the corner selling crack, he's there because the economic politics of this country, the capitalist politics, put him in prison. But of course, we make a sharper definition because there are people who sacrificed and fought, as Reverend Pinkney said, for the people, and some of whom did so in the 60s when we really thought revolution was around the corner. And they ended up in prison in the 60s and remained through the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, the 10s, and are still in prison, many of them in solitary confinement. And those people whose motivations were solely political, in other words, whatever they did to forward the people's lot. They are our political prisoners. They number about 150. And I would add to them the many, many Muslims who have been framed by this government who does this peremptory strike. In other words, they arrest people before they do anything. They lead them into temptation, and then when they take a slightest step forward, they're arrested and thrown in jail. So those people who are targeted by the government are certainly political prisoners. But our main emphasis, and it has to be this way, is on the aging population of those folks from the 60s, the Panthers, the SDS, people who form their own underground connections. They are the people greatest in need of rescue right now.
Yes. And maybe you could clarify for me, one of the Angola 3 has been in solitary confinement for decades, if I'm not mistaken. Larry, could you expand on that a little?
Yeah, and in total agreement with what Reverend Pinkney, Sister Lynne Stewart, and Ralph Poynter have pointed out. Let me just say that I'm very, very glad you mentioned that, Bill. Albert Woodfox, who is still, he is the last member of the Angola 3, the Angola 3 being veterans of the Black Panther Party. The other member of the Angola 3, I'm sad to say, passed away. He was released from prison and made his transition approximately 3 days after he was released, and that took a long fight. He, too, had been in prison for decades. When we say decades, by the way, we're talking over 30 years. And then, of course, we have, I'll get back to Albert Woodfox in just a moment, because we must fight for his release, just like we have to fight for Mumia Abu-Jamal's release, Leonard Peltier's release, Sundiata Acoli. I'm just naming a few, out of myriads of political prisoners. I like the way you put it, Lynn. I like the word you use to be very sharp about this. We're talking in terms of in the sense of political prisoners. But let me mention Robert King Wilkerson. Robert is the third member of the Angola 3, and Robert is diligently doing all that he can to assist Albert Woodfox to be released from prison, but not only Albert Woodfox, but political prisoners across the board. You know, we got to free them all. We've got to get them out there. They have been targeted. Robert himself spent 31 years in prison, 29 of which were in solitary confinement. These are just outrages. And we have our brothers and sisters of all colors who are going through horrendous, and I say horrendous, conditions. And I'm trying to just keep myself in check because it is absolutely incumbent upon all of us to do something about this. So I'm going to shut up because really I want to get back and hear what our wonderful guest, what Sister Lynne has got to say, what Ralph has got to say, what my dear brother Reverend Pinkney has to say on this. So I'm done for that right now, Bill.
Thanks for adding that, Larry. And it sounds like basically, if correct me if I'm wrong, a political prisoner is somebody who's speaking up that's pretty much a threat to the status quo. And as the COINTELPRO program termed it years ago, they need to be neutralized. And one of the ways was setting them up and imprisoning them, if I'm not mistaken. But Lynne Stewart, who is our special guest tonight, and thank you again, Lynne, for coming on to the show, especially with all you've been through in your health situation. Could you tell us, Lynne, for our audience, what happened with you? Why were you put in prison? And maybe we can take it from there.
Well, I have to say, Bill, that I always did characterize myself as I'm a real junior in the political prisoner category. I did 4 years. When I compare myself to Albert Woodfox in a cell that's apparently somewhere between, I think it's either 6 by 9 or 8 by 9. It's a very, very small space. When I compare myself to Leonard Peltier, both of whom, Leonard and Albert, the government knows they are innocent of the crimes they are in jail. Your word neutralized really rings a bell. And I think that in my case, I was put in jail to be a warning, what do we call it, a harbinger, whatever, to other lawyers about how far you can go and how far the government is going to tolerate a lawyer who is willing to work for her client in the way I was willing to work for the Sheik. And when I say that, I basically made a press release. And that press release, which was made openly to Reuters Press, was the gravamen of the prosecution against me. And very, very much so that to warn other lawyers that if they didn't conduct themselves in a way that the government found to be agreeable, you could find yourself ending up like Lynne Stewart. I will say, that there are, we could, I'm sure the 4 of us on the program, Bill, could stand there and name people who are in jail and have been in jail and are slated to remain in jail unless we do something about it. And when I say, I could add to the list Dalil Montacom, Herman Bell, Juan Lahman, David Gilbert, all of the above. Marie Mason, one of the Atia Sadiq, all of the above are all worthy of our attention. But at this point, if we're going to work on getting people out, I do think it has to be pointed. It can't be just in a broad shot across the bows. It has to be, we have to say, right now we're going to get Albert Woodfox out. Right now we're going to get Leonard Peltier out. There are committees to each of these people, and I think that the concentration, if we are to learn anything from the way I got out, and as I say, I have to say, I have to take the low here a little bit. I got out. I got a couple of things. I got skin privilege. I'm white. I got the recognition. I'm a woman. I was a professional. So definitely they were looking at me as a high priority. And my husband and all my supporters, 45,000 people signed petitions to bring me home. So I think that's what we have to look at, building a broad base, educating people as to who political prisoners are and our obligation to them, because they have suffered in jail, but we as a community, as a progressive community, have suffered by not having them amongst us. I tell you this with the greatest humility, because I realize that if we had had Sundiata Acoli as part of our council, we might have been moving this thing a lot better a long time ago.
Thank you, Lynn. And we were, Larry and I were speaking earlier in the night before the show, and we were talking about the effort that was behind your release, and how it demonstrated something that Larry and I try to talk about every month on this show, and that is realizing our power as people, and realizing that we are the answer we've been looking for. And today is Martin Luther King Day, and he said something that ties into what you were just saying about how we must release these prisoners that are imprisoned unjustly. And I may mess this up a bit, but basically he made the statement that injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. Or can somebody smooth that out for me, or was that close enough?
Yeah, that's close enough. That's the gist of it, being that an injustice to any one of us is an injustice to all of us. And you know, not only did Dr. King point this out, but Brother Malcolm pointed it out, and we can jump over to Ireland. Bobby Sands, who was a political prisoner and a martyr, also pointed it out. And our sisters and brothers, as Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. understood, especially by 1966-67, Dr. King began to realize that the social injustices, which Sister Lynn was just talking about, directly contribute to the horrors that we see. The economic, political, and social injustices directly contribute to the imprisonment of many, 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 if not the vast majority of people in this nation.
Yes.
Absolutely. And let me say this, too. When we talk about political prisoners and people are sent to prison, see, it's not just, when we speak of Lynne Stewart, they sent Lynne to prison, but also remember she was an attorney. And it was designed to terrorize all the other attorneys, to make sure that they don't do anything that might jeopardize their freedom. And when you think of a political prisoner, like myself, I was sent to prison to terrorize my community. If they could send me to prison, they could send anybody to prison. And it was like a terrorist act. It's like a terrorist, a person who goes around bombing. The suicide bomber, he don't go into a hotel to actually, because he don't even know these people, to kill these people. It's designed to terrorize the government, make sure that they know that these people are capable of doing things. So we talk about terrorism. It's not just about Larry Pinkney, Reverend Pinkney, or Lynne Stewart. It's designed to terrorize the people in the community, around the state, around the nation. That's why you have political prisoners. They're only there so they can say that if you ever step out of line, you would have to go and eat some of this food. You would have to go and submit yourself to these people. And that's really what it's all about when we talk about political prisoners. It's designed to not just about you, it's really about the community, the state, and the nation. That's what it's all about.
And setting that example and making it loud and clear, and that's why they don't want to let them out. They're going to show you, you get out of line, we're going to put you away, and we're going to put you away forever. And it made me, you know, they're making an example of the person who's challenging them. But another Frederick Douglass, the African American statesman, made that other quote, and I messed these up a bit, so please correct me and smooth it out if I get it wrong, but power concedes nothing without a demand. It never has and never will. And so we do have to challenge this power, this oppression. I remember when in 2002, when they were gearing up for the war on Iraq and 9/11, people were having questions about the government story with it. A very influential and popular senator, Senator Paul Wellstone, Larry knows Senator Paul Wellstone personally, went down in a plane crash 10 days before his election, and he had been leading the fight to say no to Bush and Cheney's war on Iraq, and he was also looking into the ridiculous government explanation of the 9/11 attacks, which have been used to this day to justify the 9/11 wars. And so he went down in a plane crash, and I can remember hearing it in many places, on radio, what have you, hey, you better watch out or you're going to get well-stoned. You know, and believe you me, every one of those 535 members of Congress got the message up there. Bush and Cheney got their war, and to this very day, the biggest crime in U.S. history, or one of the biggest, 9/11, has yet to have a criminal investigation. But then we also want to look at Congresswoman Cynthia McKinney, who was also trying to hold this out-of-control government accountable. And she was grilling Rumsfeld and looking into 9/11, and she was a Democrat. And next thing you know, she's got some kind of scandal and loses her seat in Congress. Then you had the Republican congressman up in Pennsylvania around the same time, Congressman Kurt Weldon, I believe his name is, same thing. He was saying, hey, we got this able danger, where our military intelligence was warning about these 9/11 attacks a year ahead of time. And they're framing this Lieutenant Colonel Anthony Schaefer to be the fall guy. And so he spoke up, and next thing you know, he's got some kind of election fraud scandal, and he lost his seat. So that, in a sense, it's the same play. They're not putting you in prison, but they're delivering that message. But I was hoping maybe Lynn or Ralph could give a little more background on the particulars of Lynn's case. I know we were lucky to have Ralph Poynter on this past April when he was out there fighting tooth and nail for Lynn's release. And he came on the show with Larry and I, and he was able to give us a little more background on the Sheik and Lynn's part in his defense and the payback that she got for trying to defend this man. Ralph, would you be willing to give a little more background on Lynn's case?
I'm gonna pull a little rank here, Bill.
Oh, okay. I didn't want to. I don't want to wear you out, Lynn. I'm sorry. I should have.
We haven't mentioned, but I do want to mention, because I don't want it to be the big pink elephant that's sitting in the room and we're not talking about. Many of the men, and we can name them all, are in jail because they acted in defense of the community. And they acted in defense of the community using guns. And one of Ralph's favorite things, and I know he'll be happy to have me quote him, is that everybody who is so happy with South Africa's truth and reconciliation should apply that in this country, because we are up against the police unions, and they are mainly responsible for keeping people like Mumia and Leonard Peltier and Jalil and all of these folks who in the 60s were protecting black people from the kind of murders that we see happening so regularly. So I think that we have to acknowledge and embrace what they did and not hide from it or act like it never happened. It happened. It was the part of the times. It was the right thing to do for the community. And we have to say, and now it's time to let them come home. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Ralph.
And my basic thing, over and over and over again, if you do not support the people who support you, maybe you do not deserve freedom. So in order to make this whole thing of truth and reconciliation, to bring it out of being a total fraud, we must begin. It's a total fraud, let me be clear about that. We must begin by supporting those who are not into torture, those who did not do heinous things, but those who really participated in the right of self-defense and defense of that community. We must now stand up and defend them against everyone. Defend those who defend you. And I must jump right into the so-called scandal around Cynthia McKinney. It was about arguing with the guard over ID in Congress. It had nothing to do with scandal. Thank you.
I'm going to kick in here also, Bill, a minute and just say that when Ralph says, you know, we have to defend, I got a letter from Matul Shakur, another political prisoner out at Florence, the most heinous prison in the federal system, and he said to me, the faith that political prisoners have in the people freeing them is absolute. They trust us to do this. They are unable, and I can say for myself, I wrote a lot, I did a lot of writing, I wrote to people when I was in jail, but it was Ralph out there day after day on programs such as yours, all of this that eventually turned the tide and got me free. So when Matul writes, there is nothing more touching than the faith of these political prisoners and all of us. We have to live up to this. And I tell you, I have major medical problems here, but once I get clear of them or I know I can do work again, that is going to be my work. I am going to fight for them and for the rights of other prisoners, but mainly for the brothers and sisters who are in jail for political reasons.
God bless you. Yeah.
Amen.
In going back to the Black Panther Party, I remember Larry sharing with us the FBI file and how J. Edgar Hoover at the time said the biggest threat to America at the time was the free breakfast programs that the Black Panther Party was putting out in all the different communities. And Larry, this goes back to what Lynn and Ralph were just talking about. How was that a threat, and why did it have to be neutralized?
Well, of course it was a threat. It was a threat to the power structure, the power elite, and it was a threat specifically because the community was rallying to defend its own human rights. We were the party that is the original Black Panther Party I'm talking about was about the business of actually serving the people. We use the expression serve the people, body and soul. Now, obviously, it was not only the Black Panther Party. There were other organizations of all colors, and I stress that, whether it was the American Indian Movement that was also rallying the indigenous native people, whether it was SDS, Students for a Democratic Society, whether it was La Raza Unida, the Brown Berets, the Chicana brothers and sisters, all were reaching a point where we were beginning collectively to understand that we, and I go back to what Lynne, Ralph, Reverend Pinkney have all been saying, we collectively had to act in our own interests. So that's really why Hoover, and it's not just, it wasn't just the 60s and 70s, it's the same thing today with this Obamatron sitting in the White House. It's the same thing today because this man, Obama, represents the interests of the power elite. And what does that mean? All that means is that he's a bloodsucker. It means simply that it's about taking the resources, and the first resource is we ourselves, human beings, snuffing out our abilities, if they can, to keep us from living lives, free and dignified lives, economically, politically, and socially. So, you know, it's both then and now. And so many of our political prisoners, and I want to stress this, have been imprisoned or are in exile for well over 30 years, some over 40 years. And we're talking about the United States right here in this country. So it's imperative to use Lynne's words, plural, that we embrace them, because by embracing them, we are in fact, black, white, brown, red, yellow people, we are embracing ourselves. And as Ralph put it, you know, if we're not willing to stand up and struggle for those who have struggled for us, well, maybe we'd better take another look at whether we should be even existing. We have to do this. We must do this. It's our obligation, frankly, as human beings. So, of course, we're a threat. You know, of course we're a threat. It's one of the things that makes me so proud of all of our political prisoners, whether it's Reverend Pinkney, whether it's Lynne Stewart, whether it's Mumia or Leonard, etc., etc. But you see, they thought that they would break Lynne's spirit, to use her as an example. But they were wrong. They did not break Sister Lynne's spirit. No, she stayed strong, she stayed principled, as are our other political prisoners, whether it's Albert Woodfox. We got to get them out. All of them. Free them all. That's what this struggle is about. It's a collective struggle. All of us. This is about and for and of all of us.
Thank you, Larry.
Let me piggyback on that just a little bit, because, Larry, you was right on point. When you talk about J. Edgar Hoover and the Breakfast Program, the Breakfast Program was another tool that the Black Panther Party used actually to organize the people. And matter of fact, when you not only were they organizing the people, they was also serving the people. Anytime you organize and serve, that's like a double whammy. So it worked so well in the community that now the school system is using that same breakfast program for our children today. What we can do when we talk about political prisoners, we have to design a program and put it into operation, because they got to come home. And just like Lynne being home, myself being home, Larry being home, we know that it can work if we institute a program. And that's what we need to do. We need to learn how to fight back. That's the key word to me.
Well, it sounds like it's what you've been doing out there in Benton Harbor, Michigan, Reverend Pinkney, and that is acting locally, in your own community. And I do need to make an announcement. When I was kidding around earlier about Reverend Pinkney and Larry Pinkney being the Pinkney brothers, they are not related. I was just joking around, but that both of them give Pinkney a good name. So, Larry, Lynne was saying earlier that we can't take a broad approach at this. We've got to target certain prisoners directly and give a concerted effort to release them. It's like I see this in the anti-war movement. You get a lot of folks saying, let's abolish war altogether. And you could be saying that for hundreds of years. What we can do, though, is stop our own war maker, here at home. First things first. And I think that goes back to also the example of Reverend Pinkney getting active in his own community, where Benton Harbor, Michigan, is where the world headquarters for Whirlpool Corporation is. And when you're big like that, you want the community to go your way, not the way the people want it to go. So I'm sure Reverend Pinkney is constantly having a struggle there. And God bless him for standing up to it. Nobody's going to do it for us, and we are the answer we've been looking for. But I'm wondering, Larry, are there efforts? I know with Mamu, I always mispronounce his name. I'm sorry. The Mumia. There's groups and websites that have been targeting these particular prisoners. Leonard Pelletier from the American Indian movement's been in prison for decades. Since the 70s. I really, today is Martin Luther King Day. And I saw something online from Glenn Ford, the managing editor of Black Agenda Report. And it's actually an 8-minute clip on therealnews.com. And it's entitled, "Direct Action Must Be Remembered as Part of Dr. King's Legacy." And I really want to encourage folks to take a look at that. It's talking about direct action, which is more than just showing up for a demonstration and holding a sign, and signing a petition on the internet. It's direct action. It's being active until you actually affect change, until you actually have a change. And we saw that possible with the release of Lynne Stewart. And I think that's what it takes. That's what it takes, and we ain't seeing that anymore, man. We're seeing a lot of keyboard warriors. We're seeing a lot of, big events that you get on a bus and you go to a certain city and you get the T-shirt, "I was there," and and then they all go home. That ain't what it's about, man. Power concedes nothing without a demand. It never has, and it never will. So I did want to just share those thoughts. What thoughts you guys might have as we're waiting to get Lynne and Ralph back online?
Well, one of the things,
Reverend Pinkney, why don't you pick up? Oh, that's you. Go ahead, brother. Go ahead.
Yeah. One of the things that that I always say in my community, and when I travel around the country and stuff like that, I always tell people it's never, ever, ever going to be a change without a conflict. And people say, well, if there is a conflict, you have to do something in order to get these people attention, because it's going to be casualties. It's going to be political prisoners. It's going to be all this. And I think sometimes people have to make the major sacrifice. See, my sacrifice was for my community. My sacrifice was not only for the community of Benton Harbor, but for the state of Michigan, for the country itself, to open the eyes of the people. We have to make sure that people understand how important it is. And my thoughts, these are my thoughts, that there's never, ever going to be a change without a conflict. We just sit around here and talk all day and all long. I just don't see it happening. It's possible, but I don't see it. This is my talking. This is the way I talk. That's why I believe in fighting. Every single morning when I wake up in the morning, I'm preparing to fight that day. Then when I wake up the next morning, I'm preparing to fight, even while I'm sleeping. Because to me, we have to do something to get these other political prisoners out. And we have to do it together as a team, not as individuals. It never works out as individual. And that's why it's so important. The victory that we had with Lynne was so important. And the people need to know about these victories. We can't keep them to ourselves. So that's really my thoughts.
That's right. You you hit it right on the head. Reverend Pinkney, my brother, you hit it right on the head, because the fact is that this struggle is a we struggle. It's not a me struggle. It's a we struggle, a collective struggle, because we're all in it together, as we used to say back in the day in the party, whether we like it or not. We are all in this together, and we have to act in concert. And these political prisoners, I repeatedly, I reiterate this, that, they represent us. We've got to stand tall. And Reverend Pinkney, as you pointed out, and you're absolutely correct, the struggle that's being waged in Benton Harbor, as you pointed out, is a state struggle, a national struggle. I would even say it's an international struggle. You're in the community there, but you're acting in such a fashion, organizing and standing up in such a fashion that it affects everyone, statewide, nationally, and even internationally. So, yes, as Smokey Robinson would say, I just wanted to second that emotion.
Thank you, Larry.
We know that what we have to do. We know that we have to get out here. We know that we have to allow people to understand. We got to educate the people about the political prisoners. Most people don't even know about most of the political prisoners. So we must take the time out and talk about it as often as possible. We need to tell people things that they don't know, because most of the time if a person is in prison, the average person will say, well, they belong in prison. So we need to tell the people why they're there and explain to them what they did in the community. See, a lot of times we don't talk about what they did in the community. Most people, a majority of people, would not even listen to us and talk about it. For get 45,000 people to sign that petition to have Lynne released was a tremendous effort. And Larry, he's more an international guy. He was getting people all over the world to do this. And to me, that's very, very important. So we all have to know what we're capable of doing. We have to teach the people, show them, educate them, and then put this thing into operation.
Direct action. Thank you, Reverend. And with that, I'm going to give the listeners two websites that they can look at while we're on break. One is the website to the Black Autonomy Network community organization that was founded by Reverend Pinkney, having to do with economic and social justice in Benton Harbor, Michigan. And to find that website, please go to bhbanco.org. And as far as learning more about the Lynne Stewart story and her imprisonment and subsequent release, please go to LynneStewart.org, and that's LYNNESTEWART.org. And that's something our listeners can look at during the break and get up to speed on this issue of political prisoners and speaking out in the community. Ralph Poynter, as I mentioned earlier, fought tooth and nail to get his wife Lynne out of prison, and the effort of Ralph and Reverend Pinkney and our show's co-host, Larry Pinkney, as being the international coordinator for enlisting, I don't know the exact title, but getting people internationally to help release Lynne Stewart. All these folks working together, thankfully, they were able to secure Lynne Stewart's release from prison, and she's back now home with her husband Ralph and family in New York City. And even though she's battling this cancer, she's still been kind enough and generous enough to join us on the program tonight. This part of the program is when we open up the phones to the listeners for questions and comments. My understanding is we already have a call in the queue, and our first caller is Renee from North Carolina. Renee, are you with us?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
Yes, very, very well, thanks. Please go ahead. Welcome to the show.
Yes, this woman and the other guest on this show, I'm so sick of the bad apple argument. This woman is a perfect example of the good apple being targeted by the bad barrel. And this applies to lawyers, to law enforcement, to all kind of other government employees. The barrel is rotten, and if there happens to be a good apple, all the rotten apples actually attack the good apple. The problem is systemic. And, all the time I hear these people who want to take up for these groups like the military or whatever, and they go, oh, well, not all of them are bad. Well, they lose that argument. And I'm going on radio and I'm targeting these people because I'll tell them, if most of them are good, that's a majority. So it would be easy for them to rise up and do something about the problem, and they have not. And when good men do nothing against evil, they cease to be good. And this is one of the points that I have been working on driving home. Now, another thing I think that is we need to work on is, and some progressives have trouble with this because they're so pro-union and stuff. But to me, there's a big difference between government unions and private sector unions. Right now, what happens is, to me, government employees are the overseer on the plantation. And the thing is, they're getting a cut of the action for controlling us field slaves. Now, I don't think a lot of people really realize that these people, at a minimum, get 3 times what people get on Social Security, and they get to retire often in their early 50s, while we have people in their 70s and 80s still working because they can't make it on Social Security. As long as you have an unequal system like this, our government employees are going to be tempted by greed to sell us out. They use that as the carrot and the stick. That pension's like the carrot, and the fear of losing that great pension is the stick. And these people will do anything to us. To me, we cannot, until, in other words, it tempts them so badly until we have parity between what people get for medical care and pensions and all other benefits between government employees and the private sector. These people are going to continue to perpetrate evil against the rest of us to get that stuff. And, I'd like y'all's opinions on this, but I just think this is the only way. And the way people are hurting right now, and I don't think a lot of people really realize what a great deal they had. I think this is the time if we could organize to bring this up. Because you know what I really resent is this. Because I know I've had my own issues where my life has been torn apart, and all of y'all's has too. And the thing is, we have to spend our time on the planet struggling against this, our limited time on the planet, while these people, we struggle emotionally, financially, struggling against this enormous evil and struggling with getting less money, while these people are living the life of Riley. I mean, they have it made. They don't have a care in the world. They're going to retire early, get these great pensions, and we're paying for it. I'm sorry. I don't exactly appreciate that I have to watch my oppressors who have hurt me and other good people have the good life, while we have to spend our time on the planet trying to escape their evil and their oppression.
You know what came to mind before we address that, Renee, is the military-industrial complex and how it's set up where, in every congressional district, there's a manufacturing plant that makes, an engine, and another congressional district makes the tires, for the bomber plane, and nobody wants to give up their livelihood, even though we're spending 50 cents on the tax dollar for this war machine that doesn't serve anyone, but all it does is destroy. It comes to the point, well, who's going to give up that livelihood?
I just want to say she is absolutely correct when she talks about this. See, we have to struggle just to live every day. It takes us 24 hours to feed our families. 24 hours. Because most of us make very little money. The government won't allow us to make money. They control the corporation. Corporations control the government. And we're in between there. But yet and still, government pays people with our taxes to get people to come out and oppress us, follow us around. There's a group of individuals called target individuals that our government has been targeting. And they use the microwave, they use everything. These are tax dollars that they're using. Our money. These people are living high on the hog. They're living good. But we have to be out here every single day trying to survive and feed our families. It's a struggle. It's a real battle. But we must continue this fight. And I love what she said. Most people don't even bring that up, about how the government is using our tax dollars to oppress us. What are we going to do? Let's stand together and fight back on this. Then on that note, I'll turn it over to my good friend Ralph.
Thank you.
Yes, so thank you, Reverend Pinkney. And as you know, that one of the things that I say over and over and over again, and it has been said many times during my life and before I was born, we all must decide whose side are we on. And too many people have decided and have accepted the oppression of the wealthy. There are too many people who still believe in the divine right of kings. And the kings in this society are the people who have money. And when you look at how the public, the American public and the British public worship the king, who does what? Nothing. They're the king. How many people worship the queens, who do what? Nothing. They're the queens. So we have been conditioned to accept the divine right of kings and not fight for the people. We are the important ones. We should be looking at not a divine right, but the right of rights. All of the words have been said. All of the documents have been written. The Magna Carta, the Bill of Rights. Let's start paying a little bit of attention to them by making it real.
Let's remember, we are many, they are few.
And for the last 50-plus years, I have been talking about education, education, education. We must educate people to the reality of our lives and the reality of the government.
For the political prisoners, however, if you want to get involved with who work for them, there are some organizations you can look up on your computer, which God willing you have, and they are the Jericho organization, and there are, we have mentioned names here, Leonard Peltier, Alfred Woodstock. All of them have websites, and you can go there, and their committees will be saying to you whether or not there is a petition outstanding, whether or not they are having a rally, whether they are calling on you to go to the prison to demonstrate. All of these things are viable to try to get our political prisoners home again.
And that's the Jericho?
Jericho. As in the walls of Jericho should come tumbling down.
Okay. Let's see. Amnesty and Freedom for All Political Prisoners. And it's called the Jericho Movement, if I'm not mistaken. TheJerichoMovement.com. And that Jericho is spelled Jericho. TheJerichoMovement.com. And that's a great resource, as Lynn mentioned, where you could find out about existing political prisoners and what you can do to get involved and be part of the effort to free these folks. So, Larry, is there anything that we haven't touched on that you'd like to bring up right about now?
I'd like to swing back to what we were talking about earlier in the program, in the show. I think it's incumbent upon all of us, really, all of us. I don't care what our skin color is or what our social position or lack thereof is in this corrupt society. I think it's really incumbent for us to understand that ultimately the power rests with us. Ultimately, this is something that our three guests have said repeatedly in different ways, but really saying the same thing. Reverend Pinkney, Lynne Stewart, Ralph Poynter, have all said it just different ways, that we are the ones who need to take the action. We are the ones, direct action. Okay? And I think that all of our three guests, okay, Reverend Pinkney, Lynne Stewart, Ralph Poynter, are excellent examples of what can be done. But can is just that, can. The question is, will we do it? We must do it. We have to do it. So, when I think of Lynn or Reverend Pinkney or Ralph, and I want to point this out to our audience, Ralph has not only been a stalwart and still is a stalwart supporter of Lynne Stewart, his wife, but in his own right for many years has been an organizer and an activist, as has Reverend Pinkney. And of course, we all know about the enormous contributions that Sister Lynn has made. Well, it doesn't stop there. It's not about individuals. It's about all of us collectively. I mean, you yourself, Bill, what you have been doing with Veterans for Peace, but it's not just VFP. It's the people that you reach, all of us reach outside of our circles, whatever those circles might be. So that's kind of where I'd like to, take this back to, because, there were many people who said, for example, Lynn will never get out. She's not going to see daylight again. There are people right now who are saying, Leonard Peltier will never get out. He'll never see daylight again. Sundiata Akoli, Albert Woodbach, and the list goes on and on and on. I do want to ask one very quick question, and I'm going to direct it, to anyone, but I want to direct it to Lynn. Sister, would you talk a wee bit about the sister that you mentioned earlier? Mason, I'll leave that up to you, how you want to approach it. But I think and I believe she's housed at Carlswell, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong.
I'm not sure I'm following, Larry, but if you want me to talk about conditions at Carswell, is that what you'd like to hear?
No. Didn't you mention a sister earlier? I'm trying to remember this woman's name.
Lee Mason?
Yes. Could you take a couple of minutes and tell folks, who she is and just a couple of minutes.
Okay, she is a political prisoner who is in prison because of our activities on behalf of animal rights, on behalf of ecology. She was, I don't have anything important to give you her full dossier, but I know that some of the things that she attacked were animal experimentation at various universities and colleges. And she was very successful, so when they eventually caught up with her, they've now given her, she is in jail now for 22 years, and she is being held in an administrative segregation unit. That means, she does not get any contact visits. She does not get any, I don't know what all of the conditions are, but I know they don't have email, they don't have any of the so-called benefits that some of the other prisoners might have, those in population. And of course, no one, I believe, was ever hurt in anything she did. Many of it was symbolic acts against, the ever-encroaching, what would you call it, Ralph is just giving me my words, corporate juggernaut. You have to be careful when you're dealing with a guy as long as he finishes your sentences and you finish his. You're so happy to be the devil again, it's okay. And he's right, the corporate juggernaut. And of course, someone who is not front and center. She's not big publicity, so people find it easy to forget about folks like Marie. And I think that, we were at a meeting once in Berkeley, and a young man got up and said, I want to challenge the fact that where is the leadership? There's no leadership anymore. We have no one we can listen to. We have no one we can follow. And I don't think it was me, but someone wiser than I got up and said, young man, you are the leadership.
Yes.
You are the leadership. You should be the one. If you can question it, and I think that, Larry, is sort of what you're talking about, that we are all the leadership. And I think what we found out in the struggle to get me out of jail, once they had said I was eligible for compassionate release, was to show that leadership. Every single person did everything they could on every single occasion. And to me, that's what makes this such a sweet, sweet victory, is because so many people had a hand in it. And we now have to organize for other folks in that same way and really enlist lots of folks to come out and to take a hand and to do what they can do. Even, one of the things that happened was Ralph would send out an email, and then the people who got his email would send it to their friends. And so his email became, instead of going to 10, ended up going to 1,000. And I think that kind of thing, we have to be ready to speak up for these folks at various social events. We can't say, oh yes, I'm an activist, but I'm a little embarrassed to talk about people in prison. So I think that there was I'm going to let Ralph talk about that.
Well, Lynn and I have often discussed the map of love you and Caroline did. And it was, I took it to the Guild Convention, and I blew it up to show the work that you had done, tracking the support for Lynn in so many, every state, all continents except Antarctica. And we put this up, and I am so pleased with that, and I will tell you that I have that, and this will be forever in my heart as well as on my wall the map of love that you had drawn to show the worldwide support that Lynne Stewart had. What did you say? The support that she enjoyed. And again, we talk about we the people and the work we must do. And when we do the work, then things happen. And so now we're back and forth, and I'm going to turn it back to Lynne Stewart.
One thing we found very instructive, Larry and Reverend Pinkney and everybody, you know, the Puerto Ricans were able to release about 20 of their prisoners at one shot. And we went to them and we said, how were you able to do this? What did you do? Give us the answer. And they said, we went to all the folks that are elected by Puerto Ricans, and we said, you will not be elected again unless you pay attention to the political prisoners and make sure they can be released. And this is something that certainly the black community should wake up and talk about, the Latino community other than Puerto Ricans. You know, certainly our black elected officials have done little or nothing for the black political prisoners. And I think that has got to be a coalition that must be formed, and we must force them to it by making the only thing they're afraid of is not getting elected again, so we must put it to them in the same way. If you expect to get elected again, you better do something for Munir, you better do something for Jolino, you better do something for Cindiata, all of our political prisoners. And that is, you know, that is pure politics, and that is pure people power. But you know, I'm not unaware of the great statement of, and anyway, of, what was the woman's name? I can't remember. But anyway, who said, you know, if voting really worked, they'd abolish it. So we know what voting means, but we also know it's something that to threaten, or that's the wrong word. Now I'll be in trouble for using such a word. I think it's a politician. That's what we must do. We must inform politicians as to the reality of our intent. And now we are back to the basic question. How do we make people understand that they must act in their own best interest or no one else will? We must exercise. We say we want to be humans. We exercise our human rights. Well, what is a human right? What is the quality of being human? A human person has the right of self-defense and self-determination. I didn't decide that. This is a cultural, social, and political word. I can't say it's reality because so few of us have human rights. But first we must begin with ourselves and understand, as Fanon said, we have a human right, and as our dear sister Lynne Stewart says, you have no right if you're not willing to use or defend. So we must use our human right, we must defend it, but first we must understand it.
But Ralph, I did want to go back to what Lynn was saying in the example of the Puerto Rican people getting their political prisoners released, and when they told their elected representatives that they would not be reelected if they didn't release these prisoners. You got to be able to deliver. That's got to be a real threat for those politicians to take action, and that's the problem here in the States. There's no real threat to the status quo. I mean, look at what Obama's been able to get away with due to left cover. You know, you can say you protest his illegal wars and all that, but if you don't actually apply something with teeth in it, something that's going to make him uncomfortable, he's just going to keep doing what he's doing. And it's when you start compromising. You know, where was the Black Congressional Black Caucus with? I heard Glenn Ford on that piece that I referred to earlier. That Glenn Ford put out today on therealnews.com. He was talking about Cynthia McKinney and how she did not compromise, and she stuck to principle. And where were without the solidarity of the Congressional Black Caucus, and so what happened was she was hung out to dry. But I think had they stuck to principle, they could have affected the change that they wanted, whatever that happened to be. And so, what is it? Talk's cheap, you know. And as far as leadership, you know, Larry and I have been talking the past couple of years on the misleadership of all these different organizations, right and left. You know, you had COINTELPRO back in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. You think it ain't new and improved by now? You know, how do you control the opposition? You know, you lead it. We are the answer we've been looking for, and you all have been saying that throughout the show tonight. And I think of that old adage of being the first out on the dance floor. Seeing what the release of Lynne Stewart recently, and seeing the fight that went on, and seeing the success of actually affecting that, making it happen, seeing Ralph Poynter out in front of the White House, pouring rain, whatever, you know, day after day, calling for the release of Lynne Stewart, and to me, there's a fella that's doing it, and he's leading by example, and he's the first out on the dance floor, so to speak. You know, there's other people that want to go dance, but who's going to be the first one out there? I'm
directing this to Reverend Pinkney. Reverend Pinkney, you remember what we discussed? Remember the recall that you all had in Benton Harbor of I believe it was a commissioner. Is that right?
That is correct. Would
you tell the audience about that?
Oh, absolutely. One of the things we did, you know, this commissioner, his name was Glenn Yarborough. He was the head honcho for Whirlpool. Matter of fact, he controlled the commission. And what we did, we decided to recall him. We decided to take his power from him, even though he had the largest family and was backed by Whirlpool Corporation, a multi-billion-dollar corporation, and we went out and were successful at recalling him. But what makes it even more important is that after we recalled him, he went out and paid somebody $10 to say that I paid him $5. And that brought the sheriff's department and everybody else out. And what they did, they reversed this election. They turned this election around because they said that Reverend Pinkney was involved with the recall of this commissioner. And what makes this so important, it shows what we can do when we work together. We went out and successfully recalled this guy with no money. We didn't have a dime. Only thing we had was manpower, organized. And to me, there's nothing more important than sticking together, fighting together, standing together, showing people what you're capable of doing. But unfortunately, after we recalled this guy, the judge put this guy right back in his seat, which was so amazing, Larry. And you don't want me to go into too much more details about it because I know we're talking about being a political prisoner, and that's how I actually got to be a political prisoner, because I challenged the government on that level. Right. And that's what I did. Right. I go out here and we fight and organize. Fight back, fight back. educate the people, and that's how it's done, Larry.
Yes, and that's precisely, Reverend Pinkney, that's precisely what I was hoping you would talk about. I'm glad you did, because what you've just done is you've reinforced what Sister Lynne and Brother Ralph were saying, and earlier, where just a few minutes ago, where Lynne was giving the example of in Puerto Rico, what the Puerto Ricans did to get, I think she said it was 20 prisoners freed. We can do these things. I immediately thought of you, Reverend Pinkney, and how what you were able to do. And as you said, no money. You didn't have the backing of any corporation, but you pulled the people together. The people pulled together. They stood together. They struggled together. And it was a victory, albeit we've got a lot more battles to fight, not only in Benton Harbor, but everywhere else. So I just wanted you, to convey that.
Thank you.
And Larry, you know what it does, Larry? It shows people what you can do if you work together. It shows. And we may not have the financial backing that they have, the resources that they have, but we do have people power.
Exactly. When the people lead, the leaders will follow. And speaking of people, while we've been off and on air, there's 3 questions that have come in from the chat room, and I do need to bring those up while we still have some time in the program. Do we have Lynne with us?
Well, Lynne has faded. As you know, she has cancer,
Yes.
and they give her 8 months to live. And this
But Ralph is there.
Yes.
I'm here. She has, she did a major effort, but she
Yes.
couldn't hang in. And as our daughter, the doctor, said,
Yes.
Lynne needs sleep. And when she fades, let her sleep.
Well, we want to thank Lynne Stewart for joining us tonight for the time that she has. This is a long haul for anyone, let alone someone who's been imprisoned for the past 4 years and fighting stage 4 cancer. Please, Ralph, please extend our sincere thank you to your wife, Lynne, and the family. And we did want to pose these questions from the chat room. Maybe, Ralph, you could answer for Lynne, if you would. Okay, the question, first question we have here is, and we only have 9 minutes for 3 questions. So the first one is, what does Lynne think of the Snowden revelations?
Lynne thinks Snowden is a wonderful and brave young man who told the truth to the American public. It can be no braver than that, knowing what was going to happen to him when he spoke up. And this is what we need from the people, because in Lynne's words, the American people have not been represented by their representatives. But the difference between white America not being represented and black America not being represented by their representatives is that black Americans can at least afford not to be represented by their representatives. Otherwise, our government has been hijacked a long time ago. And Mr. Snowden has laid out the information as to whereas and wherein and who and what, and it is embarrassing. How can what the truth of a government is be embarrassing to a government? And it is embarrassing. He told the truth. Lynne supports the truth tellers, as she is a truth teller herself.
And she would consider Eric Snowden a whistleblower. We do have another question, and this comes from our good friend Jack Blood. radio host and proprietor of the website DeadlineLive.info. And Jack has been a radio show host for many years and is back on the air again in his old time slot, which is 3 to 5 p.m. Eastern. And that's you can go to DeadlineLive.info. And you can listen in, actually, on themicroeffect.com. And the question that Jack asked us to pose to Lynn is the 1993 bombings at the World Trade Center were said to be an FBI sting operation, otherwise an inside job. Therefore, what is the guilt of the blind Sheik, her client? And the part 2 of that question, Ralph, is how did the U.S. training, arming, funding of those like Sheik Omar Abdel Rahman in Afghanistan affect his stature, motivation, and case? So that's coming from Jack Blood, and we appreciate whatever you can do to try to answer that.
Well, that's kind of a loaded question. And
okay.
And this is coming from me, Ralph Poynter.
Yes.
I would like to answer that fully, and we couldn't do that in a few minutes. And so the expert, Lynn, is not here, and I would like to deal with that question in a future program, and we could deal with it from A to Z and opening up for showing all of the lights on the issue.
Oh, great. And both Larry and I do have a pretty direct line to Jack Blood, so perhaps when the time's right for you and Lynn, we might be able to arrange for you to be guests on the Jack Blood show and cover those issues directly. The third question we have in the queue is, this is going back to earlier, please ask the guests, what does Lynn think are the connections? Oh boy, this could go on. The connections between multinational corporations, central banks, corrupt politicians and judges, the surveillance state, perpetual war, and the for-profit prison system. What are the connections?
It's very obvious by the question that the questioner understands perfectly, because he has linked up all of these negative, oppressive organizations and pointed to them by name. And by his doing that, he has already answered his question.
They're all connected. Yes.
Power elite. But he stretched out the power elite, or laid out who the power elite are and what their agenda is. So that question doesn't need to be answered. It answers itself.
Beautiful. Beautiful. And there's the old rule of thumb, Larry. Two rules of thumb. Who benefits and follow the money, right? Our old friend John Splitting the Sky Boncor did a brilliant work on looking into the 9/11 attacks. He went to follow the money from day one, and he's got a wonderful video online that's entitled 9/11 Follow the Money by John Splitting the Sky Boncor, who's sadly no longer with us.
Thank you, gentlemen, for all of your great work. And if we double and redouble our efforts in terms of educating or re-educating our people, then we will be successful.
Thank you, Ralph Poynter. With this point in time, we'll go to closing comments. Reverend Pinkney, are you with us?
I'm still with you, and I just want to thank you so much, Phil, you and Larry. And I want to thank Ralph and Lynn. And I tell you, it was tremendous. It was a tremendous opportunity for the people to hear and get a chance to know what to do about the political prisoners. But the very next time I come on your show, I want to talk about this emergency manager here in the city of Bentham Harbor, a guy who's a dictator. You know, he was sent here by the government to eliminate our government. And I think that that's something that we've been fighting. And I think that, you know, it's something that the people need to know about. It's tremendous because it's coming to your community next unless we stop it here. So
Yes.
I want to say thank you once again. Thank you, Larry. Hey, my brother, love you so much. Phil, it was an opportunity to get a chance to meet you. Ralph, you know I love you very, very much. And you give Lynn a big hug and a kiss for me. And God bless you all. And, hey, anytime you want me to come on, I'm always available for you.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you so much, Reverend Pinkney. And Ralph Poynter, are you still with us, Ralph?
I'm with you, and I'm just thinking, I'm listening to our wordsmiths, Larry and Reverend Pinkney, and so I can only say, ditto. I'm with you.
Okay. Well, God bless you, Ralph.
Okay.
Thank you so much for joining us tonight, and please extend our thanks to your lovely wife, Lynn, and the family. And God bless you. Larry Pinkney, any closing comments?
Of course. I just want to say that first of all, Reverend Pinkney, you know I love you too, brother. Ralph, you know I love you. Sister Lynn, keep the good fight. Keep on struggling. Keep on keeping on, as we said back in the day. You know what? And the struggle in Benton Harbor is a struggle going on throughout this nation and throughout Mother Earth. So, big kudos. Definitely we want to have you all back. There's no question about that at all whatsoever. So thank you so very, very much. Stay strong. A luta continua. The struggle does continue. All right? Thank you. Thank you both. Thank you. And Dave Corso, thank you for your perseverance. You stuck it out. They kept on trying to cut us off, but we kept on coming back at them. So I want to say big kudos to you as well, and to our audience, to our wonderful listening audience. That's it, and all power to the people.
I cannot be silent.
Nobody can do everything, but everybody can do something. Everyone must play a part. Everyone's got to go to work. Work for peace. Spirit say work.
I cannot be silent.